From Kansas State University, this is Agriculture Today. Eric Atkinson here, and on today's agenda, K-State's Justin Waggoner will talk about putting up corn silage destined for beef cattle feeding, how silage can best be utilized in cow-calf and growing rations, and guidelines from Justin on harvesting and packing corn silage to maximize its feeding quality. Also today, K-State's Rich Llewlyn will pass along the details on K-State's 2017 Risk and Profit Conference coming up in mid-August. It'll focus in part on agricultural policy issues in advance of work on the 2018 Farm Bill. And on this week's K-State Horticulture segment, Cary Rivard will offer harvest and storage guidelines for several kinds of popular garden produce. All this and more ahead on Agriculture Today.
Have you ever thought about where your food comes from? If you're thinking the grocery store, think again. Facts show that the American farmer feeds more than 129 people.
They are continually increasing and improving their operations. A wide variety of crops and livestock are grown in Kansas as well as the United States, providing food to your dinner plate.
Next time you see a farmer or rancher, thank them. For more information, contact K-State Research and Extension.
Thanks for tuning in. You're listening to Agriculture Today. We often talk about silage, and in this case today, corn silage, as a primary feedstuff in the dairy operation, but for sure, corn silage can fit beef cattle systems out there likewise as a feedstuff. We want to get into that subject today with our guest, who is a beef systems specialist for K-State Research and Extension, based in southwest Kansas, Justin Waggoner. Justin, as you would look at it, let's talk of where corn silage can fit into the cattle feeding regimen.
Well, corn silage can fit a variety of different beef cattle operations, even all the way from the, a cow-calf enterprise to, a feed yard operation for sure. As we look at it's high-quality feed. It's a good feed stuff for it. If we look in terms of carbohydrates or energy per acre, I think it's a relatively efficient crop from that standpoint. We get the starch and the energy from the corn as well as some of the value from the plant itself as well. So corn silage can certainly fit into a variety of different beef cattle operations. We may use it a little bit differently in each one of those segments. One of the things I like about corn silage, especially in a lot of growing rations, for example, is it gives us a wet ingredient, really makes a nice conditioner to a ration if we've got some dry hay and some grain or maybe even some dried distiller's grains. So in those type of rations, it certainly is a excellent quality feed stuff that we can use in a variety of settings.
You mentioned the growing ration where corn silage can fill a niche. The cow-calf operation, how would you see corn silage best utilized?
Corn silage can be utilized on a cow-calf or a cow situation. Typically, it's used quite a bit in the winter months if we're on native grass. Typically, in those situations, it's a component of the ration. We would typically combine that with some dry hay. Really, by itself, corn silage would be maybe higher energy than what we would need for those cows, especially if they're dry cows during the winter months. So blending it with some dry hay, maybe some other feedstuffs would certainly be where it might potentially fit.
Well, the quality of silage, as anyone who's processed silage knows, will be dictated in a very large part at harvest time, how that silage is put up. And one has to watch a number of variables here, do they not, Justin?
They do. Basically, it takes silage can be good feed if it's put up properly, and that really kind of starts at the timing of harvest.
Mm-hmm. And that is regulated usually by moisture content, isn't it?
Yes. Typically, the best indicator, kind of going back, and there's a couple different things we can talk about a little bit in terms of milk line, is to have that plant where it's 60 to 70% moisture. If we're wetter than that, we run the risk of maybe some adverse fermentation occurring, getting some Clostridia within that silage pile, which is undesirable. If we're drier than that, we actually have difficulty packing that silage, and so we don't get all the air out of the silage. We don't get the best fermentation that we'd like to see if we don't get the air out.
Hit that moisture point as close as you can. You say 60 to 70% roughly?
That's typically the guideline that we use. There's a lot of, it depends,
right,
what we're going to be packing it in. Obviously that changes somewhat as we go across a field, especially if we get into some drought conditions. Those can be variable. I know some agronomists now are really tracking milk line within the corn kernel and trying to kind of maximize the moisture content and using that milk line, being about a third of the way to the kernel to time their silage harvest. But it still really comes back to moisture content.
The chop that one might go with as far as the actual harvest, the processing, and there's been some talk about that over the years, what's best for given rations. And when we think about the beef cattle ration, what should one consider there?
Well, I think, once again, kind of depends on processing equipment. Ideally, we'd like that chop length of being, I believe kind of the standard is around an inch in length or so, but that's with the custom harvesters. I would encourage anyone who's kind of doing that or working with one of those guys to kind of have a conversation with them and the equipment. And certainly, we really want to avoid longer particle or chop lengths.
That's important for packing. It's also, to any degree, important actually nutritionally for the animal?
Well, it comes back to putting up high-quality silage. If we get it packed well, we're going to put up higher quality feed. If we look at processing and its effect on ultimately on digestibility, there is an effect there as well, too.
Let's get into one of the other critical elements, obviously, in putting up silage, and that is the storage or packing that silage, which is just about as important, if not as important, as the harvest process, isn't it?
Yep. The packing kind of goes right in line with, timing a harvest and getting a good quality pack and getting the oxygen really out of our silage pile.
And what's the best method? Which is a loaded question.
Well, we've got a variety of different silos. Predominantly in western Kansas, we see a lot of drive-over piles. We also see a lot of horizontal bunker or trench-type silos. We kind of look at packing. I kind of like to just always kind of have in the back of my mind a drive-over pile and kind of looking at that. What's really essential is we want to pack all the surface of that silo. And so if we can, as we mound that silage up, being able to drive on all sides of it and pack it from all angles. What we see sometimes out there in terms of packing, we see these long, narrow piles that even though it's a drive-over pile, they're really still kind of working it like they would a horizontal bunker or trench silo. And when we do that, we really can't pack the edges of that type of a pile very well at all. And so, as a result, we tend to get more spoilage there. The same could be said with, a horizontal or bunker-style silo. As we get closer to the sides, we've got to, make sure we're getting an adequate pack on there. We don't want to overfill that silo to where there's some safety risk of getting up there and trying to pack the edge of the surface of that silo. So really what the key is, we want to be able to pack all the surface that we can. One of the things I like to kind of look for is as we're packing that silage, we should have basically overlapping tire tracks for the pack tractor that's going up and over that pile. And then one of the things that you kind of see that could be improved a lot of times is we want to avoid maybe making our turns on the surface of that pile. So coming off of the pile, or we want to make our turn down on the ground and then come back up as we're piling that. The thought is as you turn on the pile, you actually reduce your ability to pack that. So kind of those overlapping tire tracks, if you're turning on it, you're obviously, kind of cutting into your surface, if that makes sense.
Right. And safety is paramount when working with silage and traveling over these piles.
That's right. I mean, silage harvest, especially on larger operations like we have here in western Kansas, it's a busy time. We've got, at the speed that we tend to work at with, modern custom harvesting equipment, we've probably got 2 to 3 large pack tractors that might be working at any given time with maybe a couple of trucks that are coming in unloading silage. There's certainly a lot of activity. So, anytime someone's got to be near that area working, if they're on foot or they're out of the vehicle, need to just be extra careful and aware that there is a lot of activity. We're going fast. Stay out of the way, stay alert, kind of watching where everyone's at.
But the point on packing silage, corn silage in this case, patience and thoroughness, those are the pathways to take here.
Yep, that's right. And, I think another thing is that we always, need to keep in the back of our mind is we're really only packing about 3 to 6 inches of the surface of that silage when we're making that initial pass over it. And I think sometimes there's a lot of temptation as we kind of get done for the day to just keep packing. But, it's what's really critical is to pack it as we build the pile to get that oxygen out of there that, we really are only working on the immediate surface of that 3 to 6 inches as we're putting that into the pile or into the bunker.
For those producers out there who may be putting up corn silage for the first time, maybe they're salvaging a stand that isn't going to do as a grain crop, and we've heard a few instances of that already this summer. This quality feed stuff can be achieved if you follow these guidelines, Justin.
Yep, it can make excellent quality feed. Really what we're trying to do is it's a lot of small things that add up to big things, Everything we're doing from the optimum harvesting moisture content to packing the silage really comes down to excluding oxygen from it so that we get the proper fermentation. It can be really high-quality feed that can fit a variety of different operations.
Well, Justin, we appreciate the thoughts on making sure that we maximize the utility of corn silage for our beef cattle rations. If this is an option that producers are taking on here in the coming weeks, and we always appreciate your time.
Thanks, Eric.
He is Justin Waggoner, Beef Systems Specialist with K-State Research and Extension, based in southwest Kansas, here on Agriculture Today. And we'll be back in a moment with more on the K-State Radio Network.
Man, it's hot out here. Heat stress affects more than just humans. It also affects livestock. Extreme heat, humidity, wind speeds, and cloud cover all make a difference in air temperature. To control problems, make sure your livestock have shade and water provided at all times. This will help prevent problems in breeding, meat production, and reduce chances of death. Please take all these into consideration for livestock production. Brought to you by K-State Animal Science Leadership Academy participants.
Coming your way now on this part of Agriculture Today, a full preview of an event which occurs every August here on the Kansas State University campus, and it has traditionally conveyed to agricultural producers and others valuable information on the state of the agricultural economy and some of the factors within. That is the Risk and Profit Conference put on by the Agricultural Economics Department at K-State. It is set for August the 17th and the 18th here on the campus. To tell us what's upcoming during that event is Rich Llewlyn. He's an Extension Assistant in Agricultural Economics at K-State. We've every year talked about this program, and it never seems to fade, Rich, in its importance. It just builds upon itself.
It has been. Actually, last year was the highest attendance we've ever had, and a lot of that was due to the farm financial situation, as well as interest in farm policy and the ARC payments and things like that have been ongoing. So, yeah, there's quite a bit going on and quite a bit of interest in it.
What's the foundation intent of this program as you look at it?
It's to do a couple of things. One is to provide information for farmers, lenders, extension agents, other agricultural stakeholders on the current state of the farm economy and what's going on policy-wise. It's also an opportunity for our faculty to spend some time with those folks and find out what's going on in their parts of the world, in the ag lending sector or on the farm, and learn better of how they're being affected by some of the policy things going on, what's going on in the farm financial situation and how it's affecting folks. So it accomplishes both of those. A
great exchange of information, ideas, and thoughts on all of those. But the general theme this year has to do with agricultural policy.
It does quite a bit. The new farm bill is beginning to be debated. Senator Roberts held a listening session here in Manhattan a few months ago, and that process has started. It's hard to say exactly where it's going to go and what's going to happen, but we have some folks that are looking at some of those things and what the discussion is shaping up to be at this point. We also have a speaker we anticipate coming in and discussing that, providing a little outside view of what's going on with that as well.
And the plan is to have, in fact, a staff member of the Senate Agriculture Committee in to share the direct word from Capitol Hill on Farm Bill progress.
That's correct. We're still finalizing that because of the Senate schedule with maybe moving back the summer break. But if that works, he'll be discussing what's going on with where they're going and what direction they're taking with some of the things related to the commodity portion of the program, as well as SNAP and conservation, which also affect farmers.
Very good. A couple of the other keynote elements of risk and profit every year, well, the grain and livestock market outlooks will be front and center, won't they?
They will, and that'll be on Friday. The grain outlook first thing on Friday morning, and then the livestock outlook by Glenn Tonzer after lunch that day. And so Dan O'Brien will be looking at what's going on in grain markets, looking at some of the weather things happening, some of the basis things that are happening with grain basis. Also looking at some of the non-convergence factors that have taken place that Art Barnaby's been working on. For the livestock market, Glenn Tonzer will be looking at what's happened with cattle prices, especially in recent weeks, and where that might go, some of the factors that are affecting those prices, and there's quite a bit going on with those too.
And there are those breakout sessions that your entire team of agricultural economists at K-State traditionally contribute to, and those topics are varied unto themselves, aren't they?
They are, and this is kind of the centerpiece of the conference. Attendees will have an opportunity to attend 7 out of the 20 different topics going on there. And we have quite a bit going on related to crop insurance, including rainfall insurance, and there's a new margin insurance that's being released for Kansas, and so we'll have a session on that as well. We'll have a session specifically on the Farm Bill and some of the mechanics of that, as well as discussion of some of the non-convergence issues and how the CME has tried to deal with that. Also a session on land values and rental rates by Michael Taylor, which is always popular. And then some issues dealing with the financial situation again. We're continuing the education on that, financial benchmarking, managing costs, especially machinery costs are involved with that. And then a couple of sessions on water issues and irrigation, particularly for western Kansas. And then a session on precision ag. That's just a few of the ones going on there. So it's a great opportunity to learn a lot of different stuff.
And individuals participating can craft their own agenda. They pick and choose from 20 workshops.
There is this year. There will be about 20 of them, and they can choose up to 7 of those to attend. Yeah. Each one is about an hour long. There is one session on QuickBooks, too, which will be 4 hours, but it's a hands-on session using computers. So if folks want to do that, that happens on Thursday.
Excellent. And, Rich, there is a special feature that was started a few years back as part of Risk and Profit. The evening of the 17th, Thursday, the annual Conversation with a Kansas Farmer.
That's been a really cool thing that we started about 10 years ago now. It's been going on quite a while. And we have a farmer coming in to discuss in an interview format with Eric here. He'll be discussing what he does on his farm, some of the things that he's tried, some of the things that have and haven't worked. It's been a really nice thing because they're sharing not just the successes, but some of the failures and things that didn't go so well, too. And it's been a learning opportunity in a conversational format, and it's been very well received.
Very much so, and a great ground truthing of what's going on agriculturally in the economic sense in Kansas, in that conversation with a Kansas farmer. That's the essence of the program over the day and a half. Registration details, what need folks know about?
We have a registration link. You can register online, and that's available on the agmanager.info website, and look for the Risk and Profit Conference. We also have a brochure that will be going out in the mail here next week. That'll be providing all the details and stuff. We have information on the breakout sessions now on the Ag Manager website as well, so that's agmanager.info. Or they can call me, 785-532-1504.
And once more, it's for producers, it's for agricultural lenders, it's for a broad swath of individuals, anybody with any level of interest in the agricultural economy in Kansas.
That's exactly right. So agribusiness managers, folks that are even involved just as a landlord or something like that, there would be something for them, even if they're not actively farming. Pretty much if they're interested in agriculture, they could find something here for them.
A great deal of effort goes into composing this program every year, and the result is an excellent sharing of information to producers and others in the Risk and Profit Conference format at Kansas State. Again, coming up in late August. We'll repeat the details in a few moments. Good luck with putting the finishing touches on the planning, and Rich, and we appreciate your time right here. Thank you.
Well, thanks for having me.
He's an extension assistant in agricultural economics at K-State, Rich Llewlyn. The 2017 K-State Risk and Profit Conference is set for Thursday and Friday, August the 17th through the 18th. The venue will be once again the Alumni Center on the Kansas State University campus. To find out more about registration or to go through that process online, go to agmanager.info. Again, that's agmanager.info. If you'd like to contact Rich directly for more information, 785-532-1504, 785-532-1504, or you can email him at rvl@ksu.edu, rvl@ksu.edu. We'd like to see you here for the 2017 Risk and Profit Conference at K-State. And while we've a minute or so ahead of the break, we'll go ahead and let you know about a pair of additional informational sessions that K-State Agricultural Economics will be hosting. These are the annual Agricultural Lenders Conferences. They're designed to provide the Kansas financial community with updates on current agricultural topics. Those are set for Tuesday, October the 10th in Garden City and Wednesday, October the 11th in Manhattan. And once more, it's not too early to lock down registration for these. Same program at both locations. It will include the grain market outlook for 2018 from Dan O'Brien, a look at that rainfall index and margin protection insurance from K-State's Monty Vandeveer. Art Barnaby will be on that program to look at the Farm Bill and the proposed changes to crop insurance, payment limitations, other issues. K-State's Brian Brigham will get into the macroeconomic and interest rate outlook. Glenn Tonzer with the beef cattle market outlook for 18, and Michael Taylor with her updated analysis of land values and rental rates in Kansas, plus plenty of opportunity for exchange between the presenters and the attendees. Once more, K-State's 2017 Ag Lenders Conferences, Tuesday, October the 10th at the Eagles Lodge in Garden City, and then Wednesday, October the 11th at the Alumni Center on the Kansas State University campus. Once more, all details found, including registration online, at agmanager.info. You are tuned in to Agriculture Today. We'll return in a few moments with today's agricultural news headlines, this week's Kansas Soybean Update with Greg Akagi, and the weekly K-State Horticulture segment as well. Still ahead here on the K-State Radio Network.
Did you eat today? Thank a farmer. A way to get more involved in agriculture is through 4-H and FFA. Through 4-H and FFA, we have been given multiple opportunities to grow as leaders and learn more about agriculture.
You can learn skills related to jobs, public speaking skills, and you get the opportunity to travel around the country and meet new people.
If you want more information about getting more involved in 4-H and FFA, visit them on their websites at kansasffa.org and kansas4h.org.
Coming to you from the campus of Kansas State University, this is Agriculture Today. Welcome back. Eric Atkinson here as we check on today's lead stories in agricultural news for you now, courtesy in part of DTN. The Brazilian government has decided to wait 30 days to make a decision on whether to impose a tariff on ethanol imports from the U.S. Brazil's Foreign Trade Chamber could not agree on whether to apply a tariff. However, they may consider applying quotas on imported ethanol. As of March, Brazil was the top export target for U.S. ethanol producers, shipping 36 million gallons that month, according to government trade data compiled by the Renewable Fuels Association this week. The March numbers represented a 28% drop from February's record exports to Brazil. The Brazilian Sugarcane Industry Association has been pressing Brazil's government to place a 16% tariff on imported ethanol, while other groups are calling for a tariff as high as 20%. The Brazilian proposal would allow 132 million gallons annually of U.S. ethanol imports before a tariff is triggered. Now, U.S. Grains Council President and CEO Tom Slate and Renewable Fuels Association President and CEO Bob Dineen, as well as Growth Energy CEO Emily Skor, all issued a joint statement yesterday saying that they are encouraged to see Brazil's postponement on a decision regarding a pending proposal to import tariffs. They said imposing tariffs on U.S. ethanol imports will hurt Brazilian consumers by driving their costs up at the pump. The International Grains Council has just released its latest forecast for global total grain production, cutting that forecast by 11 million tons month on month to 2.03 billion tons. That would be a drop of 4% from the previous season's record due to dry weather across North America, Australia, and the European Union, according to the Council in its report just released. That new forecast means that global grain output is expected to fall 86 million tons, or just over 4% year-on-year in 2017-18. Of the 11 million ton reduction in forecast production for 17-18, the Council says wheat and corn account for 3 million tons and 5 million tons of that decrease, respectively. The IGC downgraded its corn production forecast to 1.02 billion tons, that is. Aside from the July dry weather and its impact on wheat, the IGC blames a pullback on yields as likely to hurt soybeans being behind that cut. Agriculture equipment manufacturer and distributor AGCO yesterday announced that it has signed an agreement to acquire the Precision Planting LLC equipment business from the Climate Corporation, a subsidiary of Monsanto. This according to a news release issued by AGCO. The terms of the agreement were not disclosed. The Climate Corps Climate Field View digital agricultural platform will retain connectivity with Precision Planting's 2020 Seed Sense Monitor, according to the release. AGCO distributes its products through 3,000 independent dealers and distributors in more than 150 countries. Founded in 1990, AGCO has net sales of about $7.4 billion. Well, the USDA and the FFA are pledging to work together now on more projects and programs to support America's next generation of farmers and leaders in all aspects of agriculture. Here's a report on that from the USDA's Gary Crawford.
Here on the indoor patio of USDA headquarters building in Washington Wednesday,
I want to mobilize the young people, both FFA and our Youth of American Agriculture, to tell the great story of American agriculture.
Agriculture Secretary Sonny Perdue addressing hundreds of FFA leaders from around the country. They were here to celebrate the signing of a memorandum of understanding between the USDA and the National FFA Organization, an agreement to collaborate on all kinds of youth-oriented projects. FFA's CEO, Mark Peschel, told us.
I think tangibly it means that students will have opportunities to understand more about the 250-plus careers that are unique to agriculture and how it impacts the future.
And Secretary Perdue said the future of agriculture starts now with these young people.
We need the vitality of these youth to come in to make sure that we can be as productive in the next 50 years as we've been in the last 50 years.
In Washington, Gary Crawford reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture.
And you are listening to Agriculture Today. Next on the agenda, this week's Kansas Soybean Update. And standing by with that, as always, is Greg Akagi. Greg?
April Schoenberg, who is a fifth-grade teacher at Northview Elementary School in Olathe, joins us. And April, you took part in the Summer Soybean Science Institute at Kansas State University. What got you interested in taking part in this year's Summer Soybean Science Institute?
I'm pretty excited about science and teaching science in my fifth-grade classroom. And I was really intrigued by the invitation that we received, teachers in the district, and so I wanted to check it out.
And the main goal of the Institute itself is really to gain valuable experience looking at the science of soybeans?
And it was far beyond what I imagined. I want to start by saying thank you so much to the Kansas Soybean Commission for giving us this opportunity. I know all the teachers agree with me that participated. What an incredible experience we had, how much we loved our time together, and that we learned so much more than we anticipated.
Did anything surprise you about what you learned at that institute?
You know, what surprised us the most was the way Brian McCornack, the instructor, modeled the inquiry science model for us using a soybean, and that there were so many different ways that we could use the soybean in our classroom. We're excited to get connected with farmers in our area where each of us teach and really take soybean to the kids in our classroom, and how many different products we're going to be able to teach them that soybeans come from. It's hard to find something in your life that can't be traced back to the soybean in some way.
You talked about inquiry-based learning, and that really is framing a central question to look at the curriculum unit or the module once you get into the classroom time.
Yes, I spent quite a bit of time with some other fifth-grade teachers. There was a wide range of grade levels that participated, but I did work with some of the fifth-grade teachers, and we actually planned 7 lessons during the time that we were in the Soybean Institute for our grade level that we're really excited to apply in the classroom.
How are you going to incorporate technology into all this once you get into the classroom time?
And this is one of the most exciting parts, too, because we were actually given devices, iPods, that we're going to have students use to take pictures of plants and insects and things to apply the science inquiry model to it. It was really opened up a whole new world for us when we did a little scavenger hunt of photo taking on our own and then brought that back together and used that for some research and study in the classroom. So I know kids are going to be really excited to get those devices in their hands and use that in the classroom for science.
It makes it fun for you as a teacher, but it sounds like you can make it a lot of fun for those students, too.
I'm pretty excited.
That is April Schoenberg, fifth-grade teacher at Northview Elementary School in Olathe, who joins us on the Kansas Soybean Update. It's brought to you by the Kansas Soybean Commission.
Greg Akagi there. Thanks, Greg. And you're listening to Agriculture Today.
Did you know every Kansas farmer feeds 128-plus people?
Kansas farmers are hard workers, dependable, authentic, and sensitive.
Not only do farmers put food on your table, but they put clothes on your back and fuel in your car.
For more information about Kansas farmers, visit K-State Research and Extension online or stop by your local extension office. This message has been brought to you by the K-State Animal Sciences Leadership Academy participants.
You're listening to Agriculture Today, and up now, our weekly K-State horticulture segment. We are, of course, right in the midst of another growing season for vegetables and fruits in our home gardens. A point in the season where questions aplenty arise about proper harvest timing, as well as storing that freshly picked produce. Some general thoughts along those lines today from Cary Rivard. Cary is a research and extension fruit and vegetable production specialist for K-State. He's based at the university's Horticultural Research Center at Olathe. And Cary, let's take up the actual picking of those crops and how to time that harvest appropriately. as one would suspect, that will depend on the fruit or vegetable in question, right?
Absolutely. And it depends also on whether or not it's a vegetable that continues to ripen after it's picked, such as a tomato or some melons, or if it's one that basically stops at a standstill. Once it's harvested, it won't continue to ripen anymore. And good examples of those are like strawberries on the fruit side. Certainly watermelons don't ripen much after they're picked, and there's lots of others as well.
Let's go with those that will go ahead and continue to ripen off of the plant, the vine, tomatoes being among those. One can pick at their leisure in that case, or do they need to follow certain guidelines?
So the general rule of thumb with tomatoes is that if you pick them when they're at what we call the breaker stage or the pink stage, then the flavor, the good tomato flavor that you're looking for, will continue to be there, and they'll continue to ripen on its own as long as you keep it above 55 degrees Fahrenheit. So what I mean by the breaker or pink stage, a breaker tomato is one that typically looks about half and half green and half pink. And usually there's lines or pink streaks that are starting to rise up from the bottom side of the fruit. And that's what we call a breaker stage. If it's pink, then it's probably going to have 50 to 60% pink color on the fruit. And again, once if you pick that and keep it above 50 degrees Fahrenheit, it'll continue to ripen on its own on the shelf. And oftentimes that's really advantageous for home gardeners. One of the things that I find is that squirrels and wildlife and all those things are more likely to come and snatch your tomatoes the more ripe they get. And the same thing with insects and other problems like that. So if you pick them when they're a little bit on the green side, you still have that good flavor, but you've taken them away from the wildlife, which can be really handy if that's a problem for you.
You bet. And beyond tomatoes, there are other vegetables that can be picked in a similar manner, right?
Yeah, that's true. To some degree, peppers will continue to ripen. Several of the fruits will continue to ripen. We all know peaches. We like to put those in a brown paper bag and put them on the shelf in the kitchen, and they'll continue to ripen. Cantaloupes, to some degree, will continue to ripen, but it is important to get them when they're pretty close to ripe.
Now, the other extreme, those vegetables or fruit that will not ripen once they're picked, they're done, basically. How to know that perfect time at which to pick those?
Well, most of the time in those cases, what we're really looking for is, like in the case of cucurbits, cucumbers, and squash and zucchini, we're looking to find that fruit when it's most tender or when we really like the texture of it. So for squash and zucchinis, we usually like to get them when they're small before they get, kind of mushy on the inside. Cucumbers, oftentimes you want to pick, as soon as they look delicious, quite frankly, because when they're a little bit on the tender side, they're going to taste a lot better in your salad. And I'm an avid fan of using taste testing, even, in the garden, if you can get a chance to wash those vegetables off quickly before you taste them. But, always be eating your produce as you're harvesting it so that you can monitor it yourself.
We'll be coming up upon the point not too long from now where watermelon harvest, for instance, other melon crops will be due for picking. And there are some specifics that indicate ripeness there, are there not?
Yeah, there are. And melons can be really tricky, especially for new gardeners and new growers. Watermelons, the key thing that we look for is if you look at the watermelon fruit and go up the vine and find the closest tendril to the watermelon. And what that tendril is, it's basically a small little curly Q. It almost looks like a tiny stem. Once that tendril starts to dry and begin to fall off, then that typically means that the fruit is harvested. Another thing I like to do with watermelons as well is flip them over, and usually the light spot on the bottom will have turned yellow. If it's still white, that may be an indicator that it's not ripe yet. And then last but not least, you can always give them a good thump. And if it has a nice low sound like a bass drum, and you can hear all those delicious sugars bouncing around in there, then that's a good sign that it's ripe. So I tend to use all three of those things, but especially the tendril when I'm trying to decide when to pick watermelons.
Will the tendril also assist in deciding on, say, cantaloupes, muskmelons, and the like?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we don't typically use the tendril rule with cantaloupes. Cantaloupes are really good about telling you when they're ripe in a couple of ways. Typically, the fruit itself will turn a little bit brighter yellow, and so that's a good sign. If you'll look out amongst your cantaloupe vines and you see some that are a little brown and some are a little more yellow. Typically those ones that are a little bit yellow are starting to turn ripe. And then what you do is go over to the fruit itself and just try and pluck on the stem going into the fruit really lightly, almost like a bass string. And if it slips off of there, is what we call it, if it slips real good, and basically that stem pops off pretty easily, then that means that it's ripe. But if you pick against that stem and it stays real firmly attached to the fruit, then it's not ripe yet.
Right. Harvest is one thing, Cary, of course, storage is yet another. Different vegetables, different fruits do store differently and require varying conditions for that, right?
That's right. And, the reality is during the summer months when we're harvesting warm season vegetables, most of our vegetables don't actually like to be in the refrigerator. It's a common misconception that we should be putting all those things in the fridge. Mm-hmm. What they really like is to be cool, so in an air-conditioned house on a counter, that's a good place to keep things like tomatoes and squash and other things. We do want to keep cucumbers in the cold typically, as well as melons too. But there's a lot of good resources out there through K-State Research and Extension that provide all the different temperatures requirements for the different produce.
And do ask your local extension office about those or go online to the K-State Horticulture website. We appreciate the input, and we'll catch up with you again soon. Thanks, Cary.
Absolutely. You're welcome.
He's Cary Rivard, Research and Extension Vegetable and Fruit Production Specialist for K-State, and he's been featured on this week's K-State Horticulture segment. With that, this Thursday edition closes out. Thanks for listening in, and please rejoin us this same time tomorrow, won't you? Meantime, Eric Atkinson bidding you a good day for Agriculture Today. This is the K-State Radio Network.